Hello, dear high-level event seminar participants. My name is Daniel Wolf, and I work as a sport director of World Orienteering Championships 2021, responsible for the maps, courses, and all in forest matters. And I will tell you something about the technical part of WOC. There are too many things that come to my mind when thinking back to WOC last summer. It's hard to pick just one topic, and it's hard to fit all of them into 1 hour presentation as well. So I've decided to tell you some stories. I won't go into too much detail, but I would like to share and show various ranges of situations that happened during WOC organization as a good or bad practice for you, future organizers. Most of them are rather negative, but don't be scared. I believe it was not as bad WOC as it might look like from my presentation, but of course something did not go well. So let's take some morals out of these stories. But let's start with a good practice. Back at high-level event seminar 2020, we learned from Norwegian organizers that they faced a big black market with training maps. Teams shared the maps or just downloaded them from the internet, and it caused some conflicts with landowners as well. Due to the fact that most of our forests with sandstones are protected, we needed to monitor all training activities carefully and keep it under control. Therefore, we engaged Radek Novotný, former Czech national team coach with many years experience from high-level events, to be the training responsible person. And Radek came with a very different model. We offered a subscription for all 25 OCAD files of training areas for a very reasonable price, approximately €200. Plus teams received a new revised version always when available, and permission to spread the files inside the team. And then we had a fee, approximately €1.90 per person and training session, plus we had a fee €1.2 approximately for the printed map. These maps were laser printed directly in Doxy, also in very short notice, which was appreciated by many of teams and individuals. To administer session fee and gain the necessary training areas occupancy data for local authorities, we developed a simple online app called WOC Training Registration System. Teams were asked to register all their training sessions in WOC training areas in advance, and this data was shared with various authorities instead of compulsory offline reports. And after camps, this data could have been modified into real figures and served as an input for invoicing. And we, as an organizer, had a good overview of all training activities, as well as the teams could somehow keep an eye on each other. So the registration was easy and could be done by anyone who has created a personal account under his or her nationality. So this was the training registration system was used by teams and individuals as well. Experience is rather positive, I have to say, as 90% of teams used the app smoothly, and thanks to their positive and cooperative approach, the system provided the desired output. The general WOC license was purchased by 18 teams. It means most of the big and mid-sized ones, and teams were happy to get all the files at once, receiving updates and not facing any doubts concerning the usage of files by national team, athletes individually. And the economic result was about as expected, given the fact that COVID-19 shortened the training period significantly. The moral of this story is that you should always have in mind that you organize all the training activities for the competitors. And the goal is to offer the most relevant experience for everyone, where I think we succeeded and we got a very positive feedback from many experienced coaches and team leaders. The story of course Overprint. A piece of fence was hidden under an uncut control circle overprint during sprint qualification. This small error led to many time losses, fortunately without any crucial impact on participation in the final. To be honest, I started to be quite nervous watching live GPS tracking and seeing so many mistakes there. I knew about this fence from the very beginning. It was not artificial, so I have never considered this as a tricky place and as a route choice. Therefore, I did not evaluate it as very important and somehow did not crop the control circle. Many eyes saw the courses before the race and nobody noticed or thought that this could be an issue. But many runners overlooked this fence and were trapped, including the future world champion Isaac von Krusecherna. He made a huge mistake on the first control in sprint qualification, and in his heat, it was not even a route choice at all, but he made it to the final where he won. We only did not see him on TV as he started very early in the finals due to this mistake. Another issue with overprint we discovered together with SCA during the final check of the printed maps. As you know, when using offset printing, purple overprint can easily move a bit in case you are using artificial barriers just in purple. It's always tricky and you need to make it somehow bigger, otherwise a tiny gap may occur on a printed map. But we had a different issue, a forbidden road and allowed pavement along it. And in two heats, the purple overprint moved a bit and made the passage smaller. So SCA decided to reprint those maps. So thanks to Czech, our printing company, we managed to reprint two men's heats in a very short notice on Friday, just a 1 day prior to the competition, to achieve the best possible quality. So the moral of this story is to always check the final course layout very carefully. Test it in full speed, let it be checked by controllers and try to get sample prints to evaluate the overprint issues on paper, where you can discover such errors much easier. Even such detail as this uncropped circle can ruin your course totally. Our story had a fortunate happy end, so I'm glad for this, but be careful in the future. Next story, I called the story of unexpected route choices. When setting a sprint course in Terezin, balancing the longest leg through the fortress was one of the biggest challenges. I wanted to serve as many variants as possible. I wanted to have the most complicated variant through the tunnels as the shortest and fastest, which happened during the race, at least in the men's class. So I'm glad for this. And I wanted to have the time losses on longer options of up to 10 or 15 seconds. So the runners is somehow punished for choosing wrongly, but the wrong route choice does not ruin his or her race completely. Which also happened during the race. The differences in men's class were very small. What we really did not expect is that somebody would decide to run through the arena. I remember the call with Roman and Jan, our national controllers, where Roman asks, "And are you not afraid that they will run through the arena?" Then we measured it. We spotted the difference that this option is almost 200 meters longer and agreed that nobody will choose this option. Then on the race day, when I was staying in the arena and I saw Tove running on the roof of a fortress building above the arena, I was really shocked. What is she doing? It did not even let them cut the grass there. Now, retrospectively, I understand it was quite easy. When you overlook this crooked artificial fence, it doesn't seem so longer. Tove lost 51 seconds on this leg. In sprint distance, it is an extremely huge amount of time. And I was really afraid it would ruin the race. That everyone is going to discuss just whether it was possible to run through the arena or not. And nobody will remember the wonderful courses. But Tove soon showed that time loss of 51 seconds is not an issue at all for her. And she managed to come back to first place and became the world champion despite this blackout. Similar story, long distance. Natalia Gemperle fighting for a medal. And on an easy transfer link towards the arena passage, she decided to run around instead of straight. She ran through the village, blocked by TV compound. She needed to climb up slipper uphill towards the arena. Then she needed to cross the finish zone, all the fences, and she approached the control via a corridor in the opposite direction. It cost her almost 1 minute and dramatized her way to the silver medal quite a lot. In both cases, we did not expect these route choices to be chosen. In both cases, we may have maybe underestimated the situation and did not make it very obvious in the map, which is always tricky to draw everything in the arena. In both cases, it had a happy end, but again, we were very close to troubles. The moral of this story is that you should always expect all possible variants, even if some seem really disadvantageous and nonsensical for you. In case you don't want runners to take some route choice, always ban it clearly on the competition map and guard it. That's the only way how to solve this. In WOC sprint disciplines, we used quite a lot of artificial barriers to change a bit the terrain structure that runners studied from old maps in advance, and also to achieve the WOC level in less demanding parts of the terrain. We used several different types of drawing the barriers in the map for legibility reasons. In principle, barriers with huge impact were made very transparent, while those prolonging running time just by several seconds only were drawn usually as common fences without any highlighting. The approach was presented in Bulletin 4 and as well at a team officials meeting and at technical model event, and there were no complaints about this. All uncrossable walls and areas were taped and manned for fairness and safety reasons. Almost 60 people did all the taping and built artificial fences for many hours. Maybe it was too much and did not look very nice on TV, but the race was fair and there were absolutely no issues and complaints about crossing some uncrossable object, as we face in almost every sprint competition. Our mistake was that we measured the length of tapes in OCAD. Plus, of course, we counted some reserve. We bought a sufficient length of tapes, but just in a few big rolls. And the issue was that every organizer needed to take his own roll of tape and go to the terrain at the same time. First day was quite critical for us, I have to say. 2 sprint competitions in one day. Somebody was always waiting to get some tape or other material, and we were under big time pressure to manage everything on time. In the end, we needed to buy much more tapes than we calculated before to enable people to work simultaneously. In the sprint relay on the following day, it was much more calm, as we recycled the tapes from the sprint and it was separated already. So my advice is not to measure the length only, but prepare enough separate material for every person or for every area in the competition area which needs to be taped. And one more thing, showing we were really very progressive WOC, is that we implemented an artificial barrier in forest race as well to support curve setting intention. Relay curve setter Radek Novotný simply wanted to keep runners in the rocks and not allow them to go down to big re-entrance. It was double taped and managed in the forest as well. So maybe a new trend? Who knows? One of our main visions and motto of the whole WOC was back to the roots. We really wanted to serve the best Czech terrains and demanding and difficult courses worthy of the world champs. But it was tricky to find a balance between what is still tricky and demanding and what is simply too much. My opinion is that we found it. Some courses were close to the edge, but I still believe they were fair and fulfilled the WOC requirements. After the sprint final course was presented on TV and internet, I read some first comments on social networks and got some first feedback from on-site spectators. Is this still a sprint? Isn't it just a labyrinth? Does the runner have a chance to discover the best route choice through the fortress at high speed at all? I was quite nervous, I have to say. I did not want Terezín to become a new Imatra, which is shown at many seminars as an example of an extremely tricky sprint, maybe slightly behind this edge. But as the race continued and runners crossing the finish line were mostly happy and excited, that this was a real challenge, I became more calm. And I'm glad that the feedback after the race was mostly positive. There was a discussion about very complex forking between controls 5 and 7 of the sprint relay following day, where it was very tricky to discover the optimal route choice to forking F, where the runner needed to leave the group very soon after punching control number 5. Only a few runners discovered this. But from the very beginning, this was the philosophy of the race, to create courses with a lot of splitting, many route choice options and problem solving, but still even and tight. The crucial forkings offered tricky route choice problems where a wrong decision resulted in a time losses about 10 to 15 seconds. In the case of this forking from 5 to 7, it is true that the difference in women's class was slightly bigger. I think the most difficult and demanding course of the whole WOC was the extremely wild middle distance final in Jezerské Hory area. For many athletes, it was maybe even more demanding than sandstones, and the race was evaluated as very tough. Terrain was variable from very fast brown beach forest to extremely slow forest with high blueberries, fallen trees and rocky ground full of hard and sharp granite boulders. Winning times were unfortunately longer than required. After selection races, we felt it might be slightly longer, but times around 36 minutes were expected. Unfortunately, even the best ones made mistakes or did not perform the best route choices. And also tired legs from morning qualification, which was a bit longer as well, made the day very tough. Tuve Alexanderson, winner of women's class, lost more than 2.5 minutes on mistakes. Matthias Kiburt, winner of the men's race and the only man performing the course under 40 minutes, lost some 1.5 minutes in total on worse route choices. But it would be still above 35 minutes. So-called Superman times, meaning the best split times, were just exactly 35 minutes in both classes, meaning that the courses were really longer because you always need to count with some reserve. To wrap up, outcome of this story, always try to collect as much data from test races and races in similar terrain as possible. Calculate the averages per kilometer, and if you feel your course is longer, try to cut it somewhere. In our case, we unfortunately lost many test races in mountain terrain due to COVID-19 pandemic and also due to snow. And after official test races in June, just a month before the WOC courses were ready. They were balanced, set for TV concept, and it was really not easy to shorten it. We shortened the men's qualification and the final was approved to be slightly longer. We expected 36 or 36:30 for the winner. Unfortunately, it was even longer than this expectation and caused troubles in the TV broadcast. But fortunately, it caused just organizational issues. Runners did not complain that this was too long at all. The story of the newest WOC discipline, night orienteering.
Maybe you remember the last WOC in Norway and the very late and dark relay race because of primetime TV broadcast. Some runners even ran with a headlamp, which is quite unusual for WOC, to be honest, but we liked it.
We have a great news for you. From preliminary negotiation with broadcasters, it seems that also WOC 2021 finals will be in the evening, just between Le Tour de France and matches from Football Europe. Great time for orienteering, isn't it?
Are you afraid it will be dark?
Yeah, we made fun of dark WOC 2019 relay in Norway in one of our WOC insights, presenting our WOC partner producing headlamps. At that time, back in Jan 2021, we really didn't know that this would become a reality again. IOF was pushed by broadcasters, and we as an organizer were pushed by IOF into as late starts of the events as possible. The TV schedule was very tight in July due to postponed Euro in football, Tour de France and other events. And we also wanted to be visible in Czech TV. And Czech TV guaranteed us broadcasting times from 6 to 8 plus p.m. every competition day. Compared to WOC in Norway, our WOC was more than 1 month earlier when nights are the shortest. So we believed it would be okay. We were lucky in most of the races. The weather and visibility was great. But we got all the bad luck during the men's relay. Men were influenced by the extremely bad visibility due to late start combined with heavy clouds and thunderstorms. Some of the top teams even used headlamps on the second and third legs. Some other teams blamed us that we did not offer the headlamps for all. Even upon request, we allowed some team members before the race started to enter the public area of the arena and buy a headlamp there in the sports stand. We were really not prepared for such a sudden change of visibility and such a huge thunderstorm. And unfortunately, many teams neither. Although we presented the weather forecast during the team officials meeting, unfortunately, the weather influenced the race a lot. But we are outdoor sports, and this sometimes happens. And we were lucky that it was a relay with a mass start where the teams had similar conditions. It would be much, much worse during the individual race for the late starters. As an immediate corrective action, we moved the start of the long distance the following day earlier to avoid such a situation, but the weather was much better that day. The moral of this story is more focused on the IOF than on you, future organizers. We experienced already 2 such cases with the dark WOC race. Unless we don't want to have a night orienteering as a new WOC discipline, let's not risk anymore and try to find a different solution like delayed broadcast or whatever. Unfortunately, our playground is huge. We cannot light it up as biathlon stadium or cross-country skiing stadium. So we need to compete during daylight and not just when it's best for TV. Another story connected with the rainy relay and extremely bad weather I called the story of wet maps. 2 athletes destroyed their map totally during the race with impact on their performance. Plastic bags were torn and the wet paper crumbled. We received complaints about maps and plastic bag quality from one of the affected teams. So let's check what happened then. We used the very same plastic bags as for previous IOF high-level and national competitions organized by our team, many times tested without any issue. We even increased the print quality for this WOC relay by using offset print for relay races as well. Unfortunately, the weather and terrain was so extreme that it was easy to fall down and break the plastic bag with the map in this demanding rocky terrain. These runners wanted to exchange their map on the arena passage, but it was not possible, just for somebody and not for all, and we were not prepared for such immediate map exchange during the race. The runner is responsible for his or her map, so we rejected the complaint and no further protest was received. However, as an immediate corrective measure, we scheduled, prepared and communicated map exchange possibilities for the long distance race on the following day. Approximately half of the runners used this opportunity, but I've checked all thrown away maps and these maps were neither destroyed nor wet, just dirty. But as mentioned already, the weather during the long distance race was much, much better. After the WOC, the case was discussed with the printing company and some tests were done. I have to say that no general mistake was found. Print was okay. And the ink and colors should not blur when just wet. But very wet G-print paper, which was used for all WOC maps, can of course crumble when shaved. As an outcome from the discussion, we received a recommendation from the printing company that to avoid any blurring, the printing should take place as long before the competition as possible. They recommend a month or something like this, which is usually not possible because maps need enough time to get dry. We printed relay maps 2 weeks prior to the competition. Printed maps should not be kept just in a sealed bundle like this, but should be aired to support drying. And maps should not be sealed into the plastic bag immediately after printing. It makes the drying process impossible, but instead just before the competition. And there we probably made a mistake because the relay maps were the first which we packed into plastics just a few days after printing. And before were kept wrapped in a foil like this. So maybe the colors on some maps were not dry enough, but who knows? As I said, we know about 2 cases of destroyed wet maps, both in men's relay when the weather was really extreme. We are really sorry for this, but as I said, otherwise it was absolutely okay during the whole WOC and the print quality was great. We even increased the print quality for relay, that we printed also relay in offset, meaning we created printing plates for every variant. And some recommendations for the future: always consult the best treatment with the maps with the printing company. Let the maps dry as much as possible and maybe consider double waterproof protection and print to waterproof paper instead of G-print. Even thus, the quality can be a bit lower when using waterproof paper, because we agreed with our printing company that G-print combined with offset printing is the best possible quality we can achieve. Next story is the last one about the relay. I called it the story of forking distribution. I'd like to share with you how we solved the issue with forking distribution, because when all 4 legs are put into the same OCAD curse setting file, it appears that OCAD is absolutely not able to create a desired forking distribution. Relay curse setter Radek made a check of forking distribution in the sprint relay by exporting the predefined start numbers, and we found out that it was really insufficient. For example, on the first leg, relay number 3, Denmark, had only 1 different forking out of 7 to relay number 1, Sweden. The same case, Switzerland versus Norway, only 1 different forking. I don't know why OCAD distributed the variants like this. We didn't want to do it all manually and risk huge mistakes, but we fine-tuned the curses somehow. We had 7 forkings per leg, and we really did not want the race to end up that the forkings are not decisive at all. So we decided to step in. Unfortunately, it is not possible to change the forking distribution, and we did not want to print just variants and assign all manually and risk huge mistakes. In the end, we decided to set a wider range of start numbers in OCAD from number 1 to 250, and Radek picked the start numbers that fit the best to achieve as different forking as possible. For example, BIP number 3, Denmark, was in fact relay number 85 in OCAD. Fortunately, the neighboring alternatives generated by OCAD are mirrors of one another, which made that job a bit easier. So BIP 4 Norway was in fact number 86 in OCAD, and we allocated pairs like this. And then we sent the list of numbers we wanted to be printed to the printing company, and we also sent the same list together with an OCAD file to IT so they could allocate it correctly in all softwares, and of course to the GPS team so they could display the correct variant in the TV broadcast. Of course, these files were multiple times checked by organizers and SCA, and then we restickered the relay number on the map with correct bit number according to the file, so only the bit number is visible on the competition map. Second option was to print just variants and assign them all manually. This method was also used quite often in the past, what I know, but it can cause some mistakes that you allocate the wrong variant within the relay team, and then it can happen that not all teams have this very same curse in the end, which is a huge problem. Our method was safer from this point of view, and in that we were just switching relay numbers, but we did not change anything within one team. In the forest relay, we also did a similar check, but only some top 6 relays were properly checked, and it seemed sufficient to us. We decided to keep the distribution from OCAT without stepping in and risking mistakes. However, during WOC week, a few days before the event, when SEA team was checking the final printed maps, they discovered that some teams behind top 6 had very similar forking with the top teams. For example, Austria in the men's class had only 1 or 2 different forkings compared to Sweden in the whole race. And the first legs were totally identical. So we were pushed by the SEA team to change it and to take some relay numbers from reserve or weaker teams and switch it. But we were not prepared for this. And we were already under time pressure a few hours before the race, and everything was ready and set. Maps were packed and sorted, and the roles of the maps were prepared. So after a long discussion, we refused this and did not want to risk any mistakes. We decided to rely on route choice problems and demanding terrain that will split the teams sufficiently. Finally, it was like this, partly due to very bad weather and tough conditions. The group split it very fast, and wrong forking distribution was not an issue in this case. But let's take the moral of this story and always check the forking distribution before printing, whether it is sufficient by OCAT or some intervention is needed. In sprint relay or forest relay, in faster terrain, it can be a real issue, and it's pity if you prepare demanding courses full of forking and then it ends up that it's not used and the runners can simply follow each other. Good for us as an organizer is that runners don't know this. The story of the longest legs. When setting the long distance course for the very last race of WOC 2021, course setter Petr Karvánek spent a huge amount of time balancing the longest legs. The longest leg of the course to the second control was discussed from the very first concepts to the last moment, because during last testing, we decided that the previous position of the first control, you can see it in purple, was not very clear when approaching from the re-entrance, so we decided to move it and set 2 different controls for men and women. There was a long discussion about the replacement some months before the event. On the picture, you can see that the same control was used also for World University Champs 1982. You can compare how the mapping quality improved, by the way. On the race day, when we were following the GPS tracking on the big screen, it was more and more clear that the King's leg, discussed for many hours in detail and offering many theoretical route choices, is slowly changing into one big course setter's disappointment. Only 7 women and 9 men chose the southernmost straight option. All other runners are more or less using the main road through the forest and approaching the control from the north. Tactics of many runners was simply to avoid rocks and deep re-entrance and to use tracks and road as much as possible. Many tested and expected route choices were not chosen on longer legs. Therefore, fastest leg times were run on variants which were tested as slower. Personally, I tested this leg running both options with similar effort, and I was faster on the southern option, and I still believe that it was faster, but unfortunately the best runners did not choose it, so the best times were run on the much longer northern variant. Only Norwegian star Andrine Benjaminsen proved that the southern option was good, but unfortunately she made a mistake in the beginning and did not perform it ideally. All course opponents, including myself, thought that the southern option would be more popular. Only Radek Novotný had a different opinion and said that runners will know the main road from the old maps and will use it as much as possible. And he was totally right. Second long leg on the men's course to the fifth control was much better balanced from this point of view, but still many more runners, including the best ones, ran around. All the stars were scared of the rocks. We got this feeling after the test races in June already, but it was too late to change the whole concept. At least we fooled those runners a bit on leg 7, respectively 15 in men's class, where using the main road was much slower. We tested it and the southern option was almost 2 minutes faster. We couldn't believe it. It was really much longer to run around from the north, and the race showed it as well. I'm only disappointed that nobody tested the straight option here, which was comparable during testing as well. I have no general morals from this story. It is a more specific sandstone problem, I think. But I still think the course was great. Winning the Course of the Year contest is proof. It worked very well on the middle and short legs with many route choices, where we succeeded in keeping runners in the rocks. On long legs, it was unfortunately very hard to keep them there. Tracks and roads were simply very attractive for tired legs. And the long distance topic brings me to my last story I would like to mention here. As you know, France has TGV, Germany ICE, and our WOC also had one fast express train called FKD, aka Fosser Kibbutz Daily. These three phenomenal athletes starring in my last story with one big if. Plus, we need to add the unhappy hero of the day, Daniel Hubmann, who ended without a medal. But from the beginning, we had Kasper Fosser, a talented Norwegian youngster in absolutely great shape that day. His split time on the longest leg is proof. He is the fastest, more than a minute there. Second hero, Matthias Kiburz, Swiss champion from the middle distance, wants to gain another gold medal running fast from the very beginning. And the third one, Magne Deli, he did not start very well, and on a big mistake on third control, he is seemingly losing the race. He punches that control already with Kiburz, and together they lose another minute on control number 4. Fosser is getting close. Decisive route choice to the fifth control. Fosser running straight towards the main road. Kiburz and Deli running around following an already proved trail. Later in the finish area, Kiburz was explaining that he could not believe his eyes, that he saw Fosser ahead of them on the road. He needed to shift up to higher gear to catch the flying Norwegian. And now the if. If there was a basic splitting method in the second part of the course, would it change something? No, probably nothing. Two Norwegians would continue together, and Kiburz, even if he loses some time, he would not lose the medal. Big disappointment prevailed in the large fan club of Daniel Hubmann, staying close to the finish line. Orienteering brings us many stories, and also this story can be produced by high-level orienteers, as we saw during the long distance. I don't have any lessons from this story. I think Petr Karvánek set a great course with many splitting opportunities, but of course, leaving the group and trying different route choice is nonsense if you want to keep the pace. So let's take it as a discussion open. It is again more for IOF than our FUDO Commission than organizers. There are not many ways how to solve this. In my opinion, maybe to regain long qualifications into the WOC program. There is a space in a separated WOC, and the start list is then based on the quali results, which is always more fair. Longer start interval is not an option from the TV point of view, I guess, and the splitting method is also not always the solution, so hard to say. Before opening the discussion, thanks very much for watching. I hope our stories were interesting, and I hope that you won't repeat the mistakes we did. And of course, we are now available for Q&A. Bye.